The governments of the world have been working a long time to keep the extraterrestrial reality secret from the public. And I just want to share a little bit of more proof, talk about it a little bit. This is from 1950. In 1950, there was a guy, an engineer named Wilbert Smith he worked with the Canadian government. And the Canadians at the time, they were interested in trying to study UFOs. And they actually did with they had a project called Project Magnet that actually would eventually go forward. But before it did, Wilbert Smith had came to the United States, and he made some inquiries, and he wanted to find out what the United States knew about UFOs. And he had met with a physicist with the United States Defense Department Research and Development Board named Robert Sarbacher. And Sarbacher told Smith that, yeah, UFOs do exist, and that they were classified 2 points above the H-bomb as far as the United States was concerned. So it was very, very top secret, according to Sarbacher. And actually, this conversation that these two men had together at the time in 1950 was actually, there was proof of that this happened years later in the early 1980s. After Smith had died, they had found notes of this conversation in his private collection. And then Sarbacher was approached about this, and he admitted, we did talk about that, and I did tell him that. So that was true. But also, there was a document that was later declassified by the Canadian government that Smith had, it was a memo that Smith had written to the Canadian government, and it was about his inquiries into the UFO issue with officials in the United States. And this is what the memo stated. It says, I, Wilbert Smith, made discreet inquiries through the Canadian embassy staff in Washington, who were able to obtain for me the following information. A, the matter is the most highly classified subject in the United States government, rating higher even than the H-bomb. B, flying saucers exist. C, their modus operandi is unknown, but concentrated effort is being made by a small group headed by Dr. Vannevar Bush. And D, the entire matter is considered by the United States authorities to be of tremendous significance. So as you can see, United States government knew about this. They knew what was going on way back then, and this cover-up has been maintained all these years. I mean, there's still people out there who just have no clue what's really going on here. They have no clue that we are being visited by extraterrestrials, because governments did a really good job of just not letting out any information. But when you read about this, and I've read about this. I've read about Wilbert Smith in many different UFO books that I've read. Different things I've seen online, different articles I've read online. I've about Smith and Robert Sarbacher, and I mean, this is a real document. This is something that came from the Canadian government. So yes, that was his report, Smith's report back to to his comrades in Canada back in 1950. After looking into this, was that yes, this is a big time issue for the United States, and it's classified higher than the H-bomb. And why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be? Think about it. So and that's why when we see, it's upsetting in a way that, we're getting some information now. We're getting told by the government, by the Pentagon, that yes, there's some things out there, we don't know what they are. But this is how many years later now? I mean, we're talking 70 years later, we're finally getting this. That's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous amount of time to be, sitting on this. In addition to this stuff, but if you read about these two gentlemen, Sarbacher and Smith, Sarbacher actually told Smith that they actually had metal back in 1950 from a crashed flying saucer that they couldn't. It was extremely light and extremely durable, and they were testing it. They couldn't understand it. They were, so they've been looking at this stuff for all these years, and it's been kept a secret from the public. And this is just this is just some of the documentation that goes to prove, what the story has been all these years. I mean, this is only the tip of the iceberg. I mean, this is only. I mean, you could read. This is. I mean, as someone who's researched UFOs and looked into it, and I've actually, I know that they exist because I've seen one. This is just a small smidgen of the proof, right? This is only a small little parcel of it. I mean, if you put it all together, all the declassified documents throughout the years, different statements made by former officials with the government, you realize that, it's real. And you have a bunch of phony people all scattered across the internet who are making statements that, we just don't know and this and that. No, we do know. There's people in our government who do know. I don't know if these people are just idiots that make these statements. They just want to make a name for themselves for somehow, or maybe they're people who are working for the government trying to just throw out disinformation, misinformation to confuse continue to confuse the public. But this. I mean, these documents that have been released throughout the years, it just proves this proves it. Actually, Sarbacher. Actually, this is in 1983. Sarbacher, in response to questions about, did you really tell Smith back in 1950 that they're UFOs? He actually wrote a letter back to an investigator here, William Steinman. And this is what he wrote. I'm not going to read the whole letter here. He says, okay, relating to my own experience regarding recovered flying saucers, I had no association with any of the people involved in the recovery and have no knowledge regarding the dates of the recoveries. If I had, I would send it to you. 2, regarding verification that persons you listed were involved, I can say only this. John von Neumann was definitely involved. Dr. Vannevar Bush was definitely involved. And I think Dr. Robert Oppenheimer also. My association with the Research and Development Board under Dr. Compton during the Eisenhower administration was rather limited, so that although I had been invited to participate in several discussions associated with the reported recoveries, I could not personally attend the meetings. I am sure that they would have asked Dr. von Braun, and the others that you listed were probably asked and may or may not have attended. That is all I know for sure. 3, I did receive some official reports when I was in my office at the Pentagon, but all of these were left there as the time we were never supposed to take them out of the office. 4, I do not recall receiving any photographs such as you request, so I am not in a position to answer. 5, I have to make the same reply as on number 4. I recall the interview with Dr. Benner of the Canadian Embassy. I think the answers I gave him were the ones you listed. Naturally, I was more familiar with the subject matter under discussion at that time. Actually, I would have been able to give more specific answers had I attended the meetings concerning the subject. You understand that I took this assignment as a private contribution. We were called $a-year men. My first responsibility was the maintenance of my own business activity, so that my participation was limited. About the only thing I remember at this time is that certain materials reported to have come from flying saucer crashes were extremely light and very tough. I am sure our laboratories analyzed them very carefully. There were reports that instruments or people operating these machines were also of very light weight, sufficient to withstand the tremendous deceleration and acceleration associated with their machinery. I remember in talking with some of the people at the office that I got the impression these aliens were constructed like certain insects we have observed on Earth, wherein because of the low mass, the inertial forces involved in operation of these instruments would be quite low. I still do not know why the high order of classification has been given and why the denial of the existence of these devices. I am sorry it has taken me so long to reply, but I suggest you... But anyway, you see, you get the idea. I see some people knew, like this guy Sarbacher actually knew a little bit. Like he can't tell you everything. He couldn't say everything in this response in this letter. But I mean, he's talking. I mean, he was familiar. He knew what was going on behind the scenes. Obviously, he wasn't supposed to talk about it. But not long before he died in 1983, he died not long after that. He wrote this. He responded to this Mr. Steinman, and this is what he said. I mean, these are people that were working for the government back in those days in 1950. I mean, this is what's been going on, and the blinders have been pulled down over the country's eyes over this for all these years. I mean, this is just more, fuel on the fire right here. But yeah, I mean, if you read books like this one here, I bring this book up a lot because I can't tell you how interesting it is. It's UFOs and the National Security State, and this is volume 1, and there's a volume 2 also by Richard M. Dolan. This is basically like history books. Like if you're interested in the history of UFOs and the government in this country, you got to read these books. I just can't recommend them enough. And actually, the information, the stuff we were just talking about, you'll find that there's definitely sections on Wilbert Smith and Sarbacher in these books that will most certainly interest you if you're a serious student of what's been going on here in this United States and Canada and other countries all over this world. Governments have been covering this up, and the proof is there if you look for it. You're not going to hear this on network news. They just don't talk about these things. I don't know if they're told not to. I don't know if the people who own the networks and the big news organizations of this world, the mainstream media, if the owners of these places are told, hey, this is something we don't want you to get into, I wouldn't be surprised one bit. In fact, I'm sure that something like that must have happened. Either that or just complete morons when it comes to this subject. But yeah, our government's been lying over the years about this. They've been lying about it. They've not been telling us about it. I mean, it's different facets. When approached about it, when asked direct questions about this throughout the decades, you will find there's many different instances where you'll have officials for the Air Force or whoever, come and stand in front of a microphone, in front of a camera, and saying things like, "Well, we don't have any evidence of extraterrestrials, aliens." That sounds, and they'll actually make it, that's how they'll make it look like it's a joke, and they'll chuckle about it like it's goofy that you're even asking that. So this has been going on for decades until just recently. Now they're starting to get a little serious about it. But they should have it's nice that they're getting serious about it, but they're not serious enough. They need to tell the whole truth. I just still don't, this trickle down effect, this trickle down way of doing this just doesn't, I don't agree with it. I just think it's terrible. It just makes it worse as time goes on. I just wish they would come forward with a statement. The United States government, like, somebody needs to come out and just make a statement about this. I know there's a lot of other things going on right now. We got the virus is still going on. We got, all kinds of bad things in politics. We got, the whole Afghanistan people are, upset about that. But, this is a bigger story. This is the biggest story of all time right here. It's time to pull the lid completely off and let's move forward. Hey, these people who decided to keep this a secret way back in 1947 and into the 50s, they're long dead. They're all gone. You could that's something that's in your favor. You could say, hey, this is something we inherited. This is something that's went on through the decades, and and just present the reasons of why you kept it a secret. But tell the truth. Tell the truth about Roswell already. There's a lot of people, they think a lot of people think it's a joke. It's not a joke. It really happened. It's time.